Not everybody fits into society. Some people live their lives with no regard for others and are not only outcasts, but a danger to everyone around them. More commonly, a person who doesn't quite fit in is just labeled a black sheep or a loner. Most of the time, we know that they aren't actively trying to be someone others see as an outcast. Sometimes, though, the individual remains shrouded in mystery their entire lives. Queho was believed to have been born around 1880 at Cottonwood Island near Nelson, Nevada. His mother died shortly after he was born, and the identity of his father is unclear. Some theories have been presented about whether he was a white soldier from Fort Mojave, a Mexican miner, or a man from a neighboring tribe. It's believed that Queho lived as an outcast from the moment he was born due to his mixed heritage, something seen as shameful then. He had also been born with a club foot, which further alienated him from others. Queho grew up on a reservation in Las Vegas. As soon as he was old enough, he worked as a ranch hand and wood gatherer in nearby mining camps. Queho had a reputation for being quick to anger and glum. When he began having frequent run-ins with law enforcement, it came hardly as a surprise for the community. While it remains unconfirmed, there are rumors that Queho was involved in the death of another Native American in 1897, when he would have been in his late teens. Most sources, however, claim his escapades didn't begin until 1910. One of these reports included Queho as a suspect in a murder of a man on the Las Vegas reservation following an altercation. Harry Bismarck was allegedly drinking alongside Queho when the fight began. Following the murder, Queho went on the run. Some sources claim he murdered 2 Paiute Indians after stealing their horses to use in his escape. After leaving the reservation, Queho stopped in Las Vegas to stock up on supplies. There he got into an altercation with shopkeeper Hy Vaughn. Both of Vaughn's arms were broken and a pick handle had fractured his skull. Queho then headed south towards Nelson and took cover in El Dorado Canyon. Now that Queho was supposedly on the run, other allegations started to spring up. Queho had allegedly beaten a man named J.M. Woodworth to death with a piece of wood after Woodworth refused to pay Queho for his labor. Why had the finger been pointed at Queho? Well, when Deputy Sheriff Howe visited the scene of Woodworth's death, he observed a distinct footprint pattern that looked an awful lot like a man had left it with a club foot. Deputy Howe then gathered a posse together and they set out to find Queho, eventually tracking him down to El Dorado Canyon. They were pointed to the Gold Bug mine, but it wasn't Queho they found there. It was the body of L.W. Doc Gilbert. Gilbert had been shot in the back and the deputy badge he kept with him had been stolen. It was clear that Queho was no longer in El Dorado Canyon. The lawmen managed to track Queho's trail to the Colorado River, where they could no longer follow him and further search efforts across a 200-mile area proved fruitless. In the end, they gave up their search and returned home. After Deputy Howe's search, Nevada State Police Sergeant Newgard took over, using 2 skilled hunters and multiple expert Native American trackers to his advantage. They gave the search their best, finding evidence of Queho's movements, but it was never enough to catch up with him. When supplies were dwindling, the search was called off. Throughout the following years, reported sightings of Queho would trickle in, and the legends surrounding him grew. He was a phantom in the night, and soon other unsolved murders, thefts, and missing livestock along the Colorado River were tied to Queho. In 1913, local newspapers reported that Queho had been responsible for the death of Canyon Charlie, a 100-year-old blind Native American man. Charlie's slim food supply were allegedly taken, which led to the belief that Queho would kill for just about anything, despite there being nothing that actually tied Queho to the death of the elderly man. Others later disputed those claims, saying that Canyon Charlie knew Queho and served as a confidant for the so-called fugitive. A few months after Canyon Charlie died, 2 miners were found shot in their backs at Jenny Springs. Their provisions were stolen, and again, the attack was blamed on Queho. Not long after, a Native American woman was found dead, which was again pinned on Queho. These unsolved crimes had been a sore spot for law enforcement back then, so it's easy to see why they would push the narrative of one sole person being responsible. Soon, a $2,000 reward was announced for Queho's capture. He was wanted, dead or alive. The years continued to pass with no confirmed sighting of Queho. Still, the stories of him being a boogeyman who stalked up and down the Colorado River ran rife. In 1919, things seemed to begin again when prospectors William Hancock and Ether Taylor were found dead near El Dorado Canyon. They had both been shot in the back, and Taylor was also hit repeatedly in the head with the handle of an axe. Their provisions were gone, and footprints at the scene allegedly matched Queho. He immediately became the prime suspect. On January 21, 1919, a week after the double murder, Maud Douglas woke up to a noise coming from the back of her modest cabin. She went to investigate, and the next thing she knew, she had been shot in the chest. Her husband was startled by the bang and discovered his wife surrounded by canned foods. When authorities arrived at the crime scene, they blamed one man, Queho. This was despite a young boy Douglas had been caring for claiming that it was Maud's own husband who had shot her. Following the latest string of crimes, the reward for Queho was increased to $3,000. Deputy Frank Waite was put in charge of the search and ensured that the best trackers were brought in to find Queho once and for all. They managed to track him to Las Vegas Wash and then on to the Muddy Mountains. After that, they again lost his trail. The group wasn't going to relent though, and more men were brought in and split into 2 posses. The men spent the next 2 months trying to survive the winter. None of them caught a glimpse of Queho, but they did find 2 sets of remains believed to belong to miners who went missing several years prior. Despite nothing at the scene to suggest Queho had been there, he was considered responsible. The years continued to pass, with other groups trying to track down Queho to no avail. When the frequency of the murders slowed, so did the interest in Queho. On February 18, 1940, it seemed the story came to an end. 3 brothers were out prospecting for gold when they found the remains of a man. He had been found high up in a cave in Black Canyon. The body belonged to a Native American who still had a Winchester .30-30 rifle, cooking utensils, and a deputy badge, the same deputy badge that had been taken from Doc Gilbert. Deputy Waite was soon at the scene where he identified the body as that of Queho. The news hit headlines days later and the remains were taken to the Palm Funeral Home in Las Vegas. Charles Kenyon, the brother who first stumbled upon the body, demanded a reward for finding the elusive outlaw, but his demands were ignored, which led to Kenyon asking that the body be given to him. He threatened to sell the body to the Las Vegas Elks Club, but a court order blocked him from doing so. After years wasted arguing about what was to be done with the remains, a bill had racked up at the funeral home for the body's storage. In the end, it was Deputy Waite who covered the bill, handing the remains over to the Las Vegas Elks Club, where it was disturbingly displayed for public viewing. The remains eventually landed at the Museum of Natural History at the University of Nevada, where they remained until the 1970s. It wasn't until 1975 that the body was finally laid to rest at Wiley's Pahrump Valley Ranch. We will never know whether those remains truly belonged to Queho or the extent of his crimes. Was he a bloodthirsty killer responsible for 23 deaths, or was Queho a man who was pushed to the side all his life, hounded by law enforcement officers who saw him as the perfect scapegoat for their unsolved crimes? Maybe the truth lies somewhere in the middle, but it's a question that will forever remain a mystery. Thanks for letting us tell you this sinister story. If you enjoyed it, subscribe on whatever platform you're on, and hit like, rate it, or leave a comment. Join us next week when we'll take you somewhere sinister.